shape-shifting reptiles, unlike Crooked Hillary!
Hello and welcome to the Kongversation. I'm Chad McCanna, who did not write those.
Well, I mean, how could you write them, Chad? They're happening in real time. I'm Hyle
that's
Russell.
true, that's right.
I'm Hyle Russell.
He did. Hyle Slush Russell.
Yeah, I did not write those as well because those are factual events.
Yeah, he was definitely circling the LA Convention Center for a month.
It adds up, Chad. Just look at it logistically.
All right. Podcast. You take it. You do this one.
You know, it's apropos that you started this episode so grumpy because this episode, Chad, it's a life history on none other than Mr. Cranky Kong. Not his actual given name. Little known fact.
Yeah. See, I was definitely doing a thing and not feeling a very real fatigue at doing 200 episodes of this show.
Hey, we're not quite at 200 yet, my friend. You're gonna.
What's this, like 198?
Oh, when we get to 200, it'll just be a great renewal. You'll feel a wellspring of energy and enthusiasm for the Kongversation. Mark my words.
Yeah, probably a wellspring of energy and enthusiasm to quit the show and let Nick do it.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Well,
we're talking about Cranky Kong today, but do you want to do some due diligence?
Yeah, sure. I'm sure Cranky would love 5 minutes of shilling, because that's just the kind of guy he is.
Yeah. Well, his character truly came into his own under Rare, so the shilling's appropriate.
Oh. And we should know because they pay us to shill, according to YouTube comments on Sea of Thieves videos.
I feel like at this point, the whole everyone on the YouTube trailer we're shilling for a Rare thing is only still part of the conversation because of us. We need to really discipline ourselves about that.
Discipline? What's that?
Okay.
That's a big word, Chad. So anyway... Patreon, DK Vine on Patreon. We would really appreciate if you would send some money our way to help make DK Vine wonderful.
Yeah, this episode so far is a very poor example of why that's a worthwhile use of your money.
But there are people listening to it live, and you could do it live by backing us on Patreon. See dkvine.com/Patreon for more details.
There's also social media that we are all over. Check us out on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Tumblr. That's about it.
Yeah. YouTube.
You can access any of those by typing into your favorite browser, dkvine.com/ and then the social media thing of your choice, and it'll forward you right there.
Stay tuned as we enter autumn for our YouTube channel because we'll be having lots more video content, including some stuff hopefully from yours truly. I'm getting to work.
Are you actually going to start producing some YouTube stuff?
You shall see, and you shall be amazed, Chad, at what
Do you want to make any grand proclamations or promises right here, apropos of nothing?
Nope, I don't.
Nope. well, not at all.
I mean, Chad. Anything could happen. I could, get crushed under the weight of my moving boxes, considering my townhouse is still a fucking wreck. So,
I thought you told me off the air that it was coming together nicely.
Yeah, compared to where we had it a couple days ago.
Oh, okay. Are you still living out of cardboard? What's the situation in the Russell household?
We finally got some chairs. That's nice. Got some chairs up.
Okay,
I had to whittle them myself, but yes, they're quite lovely.
Most of your unpacking time has gone into whittling, but it is your passion.
It is. It's when the world makes the most sense to me. Anyway, as far as the Kongversation goes, subscribe to us on iTunes, rate us on iTunes, and tell your friends about the show. Spread the word like Johnny Appleseed spreads apple trees.
Mm-hmm. That's actually probably word of mouth is probably the best way for our show to make its way in front of people who may possibly enjoy it, because this is a very niche thing, and if you if you just tell someone, hey, listen to this Donkey Kong podcast, they're not going to know what the hell they're listening to. It's too insular at this point. So yeah, if you think someone might like this very, 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 very specific thing, mention it to them.
But, that's the great thing about the internet. There's something for everybody. It's why entertainment is so bifurcated nowadays, and nothing really reaches cultural saturation like it once did. So, we're contributing to... we're contributing to this cultural wasteland that we call modern entertainment, and I'm very happy about that.
The ever-splintering mediascape.
Yeah. No more I Love Lucy's for you, America.
Yeah. The ratings that the MASH finale got, you could never even dream to get on the Super Bowl.
No. I love it. I love that there's every itch is being scratched.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
we're talking about Cranky Kong this week.
So what I'm saying is DK Vine causes heinous rashes. Cranky Kong. So this is an episode we've been promising for quite a while, ever since we launched this concept of the character witnesses, and we've done Conquer the Squirrel so far. We've done Funky Kong, obviously the big 420 episode. We had Cranky,
obviously.
We had Cranky scheduled before Funky, but then 420 came, and we were like, well, we've got to do Funky Kong naturally.
Yes.
Weed. I mean, you got to make a weed joke. It's funny, right?
No. I said we. I was scoffing at the notion that was a group decision.
Hey, I like the Funky Kong episode. I stand by the Funky Kong episode.
No, it was a decent episode.
It was a decent episode. But back in July, Chad, did you know that the character of Cranky Kong, at least the original conception of him as Donkey Kong Sr., celebrated his 35th anniversary?
I did not, actually. That's pretty cool.
35th.
That's one of those milestones that we can't escape, because everything in a multiple of 5 happens every fifth year.
I know, and the more entertainment bifurcates, the more anniversaries you're going to get. So it's like, it's an anniversary today, and the internet's going to remind me of that.
That's similar to the sort of Freakonomics case that was made, where obviously Gene Wilder just passed, an amazing comedic actor, and
in the only Mel Brooks movies we like, by the way.
Well, yeah, we've said on the show that my theory is that Mel Brooks' quality is directly proportional to the amount of Gene Wilder in the film.
Yeah.
I don't like Spaceballs, but I think The Producers is amazing.
Blazing Saddles.
It's Gene Wilder.
Yeah, Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, solid movies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly. Perfect examples. But anyway, everyone's saying 2016 sucks for celebrity deaths. What's going on? There's actually a case to be made that because media is so bifurcated, and we're hitting a baby boomerish time, that we're just going to be more aware and consider celebrity of more and more and more people.
Yeah.
So much like the more and more milestones we're going to have, the ever fragmenting nature of media is going to increase the amount of times you're going to see a significant death. Obviously, that doesn't necessarily apply to Gene Wilder, because he's a celebrity of any stripe well before the internet came along.
Yeah, but it's still like, what you're seeing is the baby boomer generation starting to sadly pass away, and not. Obviously, right. It's going to be different ages, different ailments, different calamities, but yeah, it's going to happen more and more, and that's the scary thing that struck me when David Bowie died was, oh no, all these musicians I love from the 60s and 70s we're going to start losing them in great numbers, and I don't like to think about it, but you're right, that's what's going to happen, and luckily, this is why I like video game characters, because they don't have to die necessarily, even when they're elderly and I guess artificially aged up in some cases. But we may lose them, as we did the topic of this episode's wife. We lost back in 1999, but so far, Cranky Kong himself is still thriving.
He's more virile than ever these days.
Yeah. I thought it would be fun. This is essentially, discounting, I guess, any arguments you can make for any characters that appeared on their playing cards or anything before the original arcade machine. This is Nintendo's original character we're talking about tonight.
I guess the Extendo Grabo thing that Gunpei doesn't really count, does it?
No, I mean, okay, I'll just say this is the character, Nintendo's original character that's survived to the present day. He appeared in the same game as Mario and Pauline, but he was the title character of the game. So,
sure,
by all accounts, let's just say he is the first. And that is Cranky Kong, Donkey Kong Sr., the original Donkey Kong. And
right.
So what we'll be doing this episode, I believe we have some calls to take throughout the course of it, but we'll also be just going into his life story. We won't really be going into like the actual creation of the character. Like, well, Miyamoto, he was making a Popeye game and he needed a replacement for Bluto. No, we're not going to get into that, but we will be getting into the fictitious life history of Cranky Kong, because why not?
It's less about the meta texture. Or the metatextual. Can I say metatexture? I know it's a sort of a portmanteau of something that's traditionally shortened.
I love portmanteaus, so I will allow it. All
right. As we've established, we are both portmanteauers. It took a second.
It did. But you know,
yeah. So the metatextural elements, we sort of prefer to cast aside in favor of the in-universe narrative.
Although it's going to be hard to cast those aside with this character, because this is the most fourth wall breaking character, I would say, in Nintendo's stable. Even if he doesn't really break the fourth wall much nowadays, it's still what he's primarily known for, besides being a grumpy bastard.
Yeah.
And so I mean, he obviously, you know, there's going to be some metatextual conversation to be had here, but let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
So when I compiled my show notes for this months ago when we initially planned this episode. So I apologize if this doesn't flow as naturally as it would have back in the spring, but
all that late breaking Cranky Kong news really shook this up.
No, when I was doing research for this episode, I wanted to get into the backstory of Cranky Kong, and we know very little about like his ancestors, his parents, where he came from, but there are a few things we have to go on. So we'll start with my favorite topic, Donkey Konga 2.
Okay.
Believe it or not.
Yeah.
So in Big Donkey Konga 2, there is a Hall of Records, and this is the Hall of Records of Donkey Kong Island. It's on one of the menu screens, and so I guess this takes place in Big Ape City. That's what I've surmised, but it's the Hall of Records, and in the Hall of Records, there's all these statues of what are presumably Cranky Kong's ancestors, and they're just a bunch of gorillas in kind of the Donkey Kong style, like they just extend down this massive hall. And so Cranky Kong,
are they, now let's be honest, are they all identical to Donkey Kong's model?
But without a tie.
Okay,
so I mean, but you know, Donkey Kong is the current steward of Donkey Kong Island, but we know once upon a time it was Cranky Kong, and he still kind of has that elder statesman role. And so we've basically, and some of this is fan, but this has also been kind of gleamed through the games themselves, because you have an island called Donkey Kong Island, so obviously it had that name before the current Donkey Kong.
Right.
So
it's like Gilligan was not the first Gilligan. It's Gilligan's Island.
Really, shouldn't it have been?
But there's a long lineage of native Gilligans that came before him.
That always bothered me, though. Shouldn't it have been like the Skipper's Island, or, you know, the Professor's Island, or if we're going to go by net worth, the you know, Thurston Howell
Globetrotter Island?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Did the Globetrotters have more money than the Howells?
Possibly. Probably not. They were proper billionaires, weren't they?
Yeah.
What the hell were they doing on the SS Minnow?
That never made any sense. But yeah, it should have been Gilligan's Island. He had probably the least amount of claim to that tract of land.
Do you think there's a remote possibility that it was meant to be ironic, and that's the only clever thing about that show?
Well, okay, in the context of the show, it was never called Gilligan's Island, though. I mean,
right?
Yeah.
So it was like again a metatextual bit of irony, where the audience be like, oh, Gilligan's such a screw up. Why are they calling it Gilligan's Island? I think that might be the only somewhat clever thing about that show.
We really need to do Oops All Tangents Conversation mini on Gilligan's Island at some point.
I used to rewatch it before school every morning, but I would need to check it out again if we were ever to do that.
I watched it all the time when I was a kid, just because it scratched a lot of itches. It took place on a tropical island, and it had humor that a kid could find funny. So.
And a movie star.
And the rest.
Right.
So, but in the games themselves, it's called Donkey Kong Island, and that's something that's carried forward into the retro era. So, we surmise that the stewards of Donkey Kong Island have been Cranky Kong's family. His ancestors passed down to his son or grandson, Donkey Kong. However, in Donkey Kong Country 3, Cranky's great-grandfather is explicitly referenced. We don't get a name. We don't know if he was...
What?
Yeah. Donkey Kong...
Oh, yeah, in NPC dialogue. Yeah.
Yes, Bazaar Bear, who may or may not be the best Brothers Bear, he has a mirror in his general store, and he says that it was once owned by Cranky's great-grandfather. So...
Yeah.
That's... So I don't know why this... bear got a hold of this family heirloom, but Dixie and Kitty buy it. So
I'm assuming that, given the fact that by that point Cranky and his probable son Swanky had taken to a huckster's lifestyle, that at some point they lost the mirror in a wager.
Oh, that's sad. That's
Yeah, that's my knee-jerk headcanon for this whole ownership issue.
Maybe Cranky sold the mirror to buy his deadbeat son Swanky all these tents so he could start his own sideshow to get him out of the fucking house.
Yeah, he sold the mirror and Swanky's pants. That's why he's standing in a barrel.
Swanky lost his fortune after his game show exploded. So he had to...
not just his game show, but all of his studios.
Yeah, because Swanky's bonus bonanza required, like 6 studios?
Yeah, like 7 studios scattered throughout Crocodile Isle.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, I like that. I like that headcanon. Yeah, that's what Cranky did. He sold the mirror just to get his damn son out of the house. The son he was embarrassed about. Anyway, so, Cranky's great-grandfather. So that's just one of those nice little contextual bits that Rare would always layer into their games, more and more as they went on. But that was a nice contribution from the DKC3 team. And... yeah, so that's all we basically know about the early years or the pre-history of Cranky Kong. But we know as a young man, he married a Kong who would eventually be known as Wrinkly Kong. And
I thought she took his name. She might have been named like Wrinkly McGillicuddy before this.
Well, I mean, the whole Kong surname thing is more of a clan designation. I mean,
I was doing a little funny joke.
I know you're doing an I Love Lucy reference. Yes, I know. Yeah. But I'm still hung up on Gilligan's Island, so I completely ignored it. But Donkey and Candy Kong, they're not married, or but they're banging. So, and they have the same name, same as Diddy and Dixie. So.
Allegedly, although I think Funky may be getting the better end of that deal.
Anal?
Oh my! Again, 2 weeks in a row. Why do you go so blue?
He's my favorite bear. What can I say?
This brother's bear might be best.
And I guess we'll save this for our eventual character witness Wrinkly Kong episode. That's going to be a barn burner because I assume she died in a barn fire. Wrinkly.
See, that's more appropriate than the anal sex joke.
Oh, okay. Well, we don't say how the fire started, Chad. We won't mention that.
No.
But so Wrinkly Kong couldn't have been her name. This is another thing that keeps me up at night. Among the many other things that keep me up at night. Cranky Kong, we know his given name is Donkey Kong, and he adopted the name Cranky Kong, presumably by his relatives and loved ones as it was a kind of a nickname that stuck because he became such a bitter old bastard as he aged. Mm-hmm. Wrinkly Kong, that probably wasn't her name when she was a young woman.
Let's hope.
Let's hope not, because I'm sure maybe Cranky married her for her great personality, but.
Here's a question about Wrinkly Kong.
Yeah.
Do you think at one point in her life she was proportioned like Candy, where she towered above all the other male gorillas and then slowly sort of turned into a lecherous stoop?
Yeah, either that or she was just... I've always pictured just Donkey Kong Sr. in a wig, and I think there's fan art of that on DK Vine's forum. I forget who made it, but... yeah, I don't even want to say who made it, but yeah, it cracked me up just because, yeah, just this big gorilla in a blonde wig, or I don't even know what her natural hair color was, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know what her name was, but I imagine it's some like old timey name that's not really used anymore, like Margaret.
Probably Lucy Kong.
Margaret Kong, or yeah, Peggy Kong. Which is why she was in King of Swing. So. Yeah, and see, I didn't go with the anal joke there, Chad. I could have, but I didn't.
You're clearly champing at the bit, though. I can tell.
No, I've matured in the last 5 minutes. I'm a new man.
Well done.
Yeah, so he met.
Do you want
what? Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No.
I was gonna say, should we take a call?
Let's take a call. I'm going to rest on my laurels and be proud of myself for not going the tasteless route, and I'm going to sit back and enjoy this call.
All right.
Hi, I'm Gibbon. I was going to do a long and rambling message about the Mario vs. Donkey Kong series in relation to Cranky, but I lost motivation halfway through the phone ringing. So instead, I'm just going to talk about how, like, Cranky's obviously been honing his illegal medical skills in order to give himself steroids boosts since the Donkey Kong Country series began. Because, you know, in the first game, he's sitting in his chair with his one cane, and in the second game, he's got 2 canes, but he's up and about. In the third game, he's, you know, muscle training at Swanky's hut. And then over in the GBA games, you see him doing, like, karate stuff. And in DK64, he's running a potion shop and experimenting with giving his relatives stupid, insane powers. Incredible Hulk style. And then, you know, which brings us eventually to Returns, where he's just selling a one-stop super potion that pumps you up. And we get the Tropical Freeze, where, you know, he's just kicking ass and taking names the whole time. It's a very obvious progression. He's a modern-day Bruce Banner via Gilligan's Island.
Oh!
Do we have to
I don't know where
now?
I'm going with this. Anyway.
Andy Robinson.
Yeah. Bye.
Awesome. I am Gibbon. That's an amazing observation that I had never really clocked, but now I'm looking at the key art on this very episode, and sure enough, he is getting... I think his oldest point is DKC in 1994.
Well, I am Gibbon. It should be pointed out is probably one of the biggest fans of Cranky Kong, or at least Donkey Kong Sr. on the DK Vine forum. He is the proprietor of DK Girder, which is the kind of unofficial sister site to DK Vine in that it covers the arcade era. So
we have a lot of unofficial sister sites.
Yeah, I know. Our moms unofficially got around a lot, but yeah, check it out. And thank you for the call. And you know, I do wonder. You know, one of the big things that's being hawked at like GNCs and online right now is like hormone treatment for men as they age. You know, like, oh, you know, testosterone. Are you feeling not feeling as manly as you once did, or is your sex drive just not what it used to be? Are you feeling sluggish? Then rub this testosterone in your armpits, and you'll be a new man. And I think there's all sorts of weird side effects for it, but it's kind of a big industry right now. So what was Cranky?
This is why you need to stop watching cable TV news.
No, I mean it's everywhere. I read stories about how men shouldn't actually do this because the body isn't actually cut out to be jacked up well into your 60s. But
you mean people shouldn't just slather themselves in human growth hormones? What?
I mean, we're never going to learn, Chad, unless we make some mistakes.
Okay.
But and it's also designed. I love the marketing too because it's designed to make any man watching it automatically feel inferior. It's like, well, yeah, I guess I do kind of suck now. Oh,
Yeah.
I better
Gotta
order.
crack a few testicles to make an omelet.
So, but was Cranky the first one to really hit upon this notion? We do know he dabbles in chemistry, so I'm saying that I always chalked up his performance in Tropical Freeze just as kind of like a Yoda in Attack of the Clones moment, like, oh, he's still capable of this. He just has to take long naps afterwards.
Yeah, but how shitty was that Yoda in Attack of the Clones moment? That was stupid.
It was designed for the idiots in the audience to have something to cheer at, despite it making no sense and not being true to the character as he was in the original trilogy.
Right. When he's like matters not, size does, and all this, and he's all about just being one with the Force. He's like a little writhing mass of Force power,
He even has a line where he says, "Obviously, we can't settle this with our skills for the Force. The only way we can settle this is with a lightsaber," which is just the complete opposite of his philosophy.
Yeah. And then he turns into a jackrabbit.
Yeah, and then because audiences on the opening night just love that so much, they decided to make that the crux of their marketing campaign going forward with Yoda Man. Remember Yoda Man?
I don't remember Yoda Man whatsoever.
Yeah, they promoted Attack of the Clones with like, come see Yoda fight, Yoda Man.
Really? As like Yoda Man?
Yeah, that was the intent.
Ooh.
The criminal intent. Yeah.
Yeah. This. We need to get Munch on the case.
Wrong. No, he's SVU, man. What are you doing?
What I thought. Doesn't he eventually show up in all of them just in passing?
I'm sure he does. I think he's the real rapist because why is he always showing up at these heinous crimes?
Yeah, he's the one putting the idea in all the future Hollywood megastars' heads.
He's the one. He's called Munch, for Christ's sake. Follow the
It's been in front of our eyes for 25 years. Across every series known to man. No, I really love the idea that Cranky Kong he's basically, if you think of it this way, his interest in science might just have been so that he could make himself powerful enough to star in a video game again one day.
I really want one of the random animations when you go into like Cranky's cabin in a future Donkey Kong game just to be him slathering that testosterone shit under his arms, and then he looks and he quickly throws it away as he sees you. Mm-hmm. That's what I want to see. Make it happen. I want to see that more than the Kremlings retro. So forget about the Kremlings. Forget about Animal Buddies. I just want that acknowledged.
They don't listen to this.
No. So anyway,
can you dig it? Remember that old chestnut from like 2 years ago?
Yeah. I can't wait for their Digger T Rock revival. I really, because they already did wonders with one rare property. Why not revive it?
Finally, Nintendo bought back Digger T Rock. About time.
I do worry about retro. We haven't heard from them in a while. Has anybody checked on them? It's like your elderly neighbor. Like the newspapers are starting to pile up. Should the landlord I don't know, just go in, at least knock?
Michael Kelbau's Life Alert ran out of batteries long ago.
I've fallen and I can't get up. That's because he's Texan, right?
Because he's of course he has a thick accent, just like me. Yeah. He's not even Texan. He just lives there now.
He fell into a bathtub of bananas El Gratin.
Right. So
anyway, okay. Back to Cranky Kong. So after he married Wrinkly Kong, at some point they had kids, and this is where it gets a little hazy. Because we know they definitely procreated. The question is, did their procreation then procreate themselves? Because
What?
Well, okay, because his relationship with Donkey Kong, the current Donkey Kong, we know that he's called him his grandson, but he's also called him his son who he raised. And that's seen in both Rare's games and Retro's games, acknowledged in both. So
right, I think he was. Well, it's flipped back and forth several times throughout the years.
Yeah.
Rare was inconsistent about it because he was originally established as Donkey Kong's father in kind of promotional materials in DKC when the character was introduced. In DKC 2, he referred to Donkey Kong as his grandson.
I believe the DKC instruction manual, it was a dark and stormy night, describes him as his grandpappy or something.
Okay.
But
further muddying the waters. And then in DK64, he straight up called him his lazy good for nothing son or something like that.
Yeah.
Or no, he referred to him as son when he showed up.
Yeah. So obviously when we were presented with the character of Cranky Kong and it was established he was the original Donkey Kong, we then looked at the modern Donkey Kong and thought, oh, Donkey Kong Jr. So even in your heads, that connection is automatically made. But then again, the waters were immediately muddied by conflicting reports from Rare. And in 1999, they eventually settled on, no, he is his biological father. And this was backed up by Lee Loveday and Scribes and Donkey Kong 64's promotional materials, which, by the way, muddied the waters in other relations, like Diddy being Donkey's nephew. That lasted a year and was never referenced again.
And Tiny being an accountant.
Right. In the German promotional materials, which, Donkey Kong's always better in German, in my opinion.
That's what I've always said.
But if only the Nazis had won. But...
Oh my. Very different Gamescom this year.
So, I don't know, but when DK Vine's stance for the longest time, from when we were conceived in 1999 up until, I would say, 2010, was, no, Cranky is his father, Donkey Kong is his son, Donkey Kong is Donkey Kong Jr. When Donkey Kong...
And I think we can... Oh, go ahead with the history, but I think we can still safely say that Donkey Kong was Donkey Kong Jr., despite...
I think that's the only thing that really feels comfortable to me, because...
And it's all about making ourselves feel comfortable in the face of overwhelming canonical evidence.
Well, no, you look at Donkey Kong Country, and the biggest theme of the DKC trilogy, or at least a metatextual theme, was being a video game hero, and kind of the legacy and whatnot. Cranky Kong was kind of retired at that point. But Donkey Kong started the game, the modern Donkey Kong started that game as already a video game hero who Diddy was trying to emulate and he looked up to. So the only way he could already be a video game hero was if he had been in a video game prior to that. So you look back at Donkey Kong Jr. and you're like, oh, okay, that's where he became a video game hero. So that's why, for me, like, the argument is cut and dry. But that would mean... Because in 2010, we finally gave up and said, okay, Retro really, really laid on thick that Cranky was his grandfather, but he also said, I didn't raise you in a barn. So
yes, so we got to have it both ways. We got to have
the barn that Wrinkly Kong died in.
Right. We got to have our delicious beard-flavored ice cream cake and eat it too.
Yeah, because he had that weird ice cream beard in from I think Jungle Climber to Returns. It was, anyway. So I
like the ice cream beard. I think it's a good, in Tropical Freeze, it's a good middle ground where it's actually made out of furry shenanigans, but it's still ice cream shaped.
Yeah, I think the lack of furry shenanigans made it look kind of weird, but it looks fine now. So yeah, like you said, our cake and eat it too, because now Cranky is his biological grandfather, but raised him as a son, and you could still make the case that he's Donkey Kong Jr. And
yes,
because
especially given the fact that the Donkey Kong moniker is more about succession of I guess oversight on the island and not necessarily the character's name. So even if there was this missing generation, Donkey Kong. The Donkey Kong we currently know would have probably been next in line to be the next Donkey Kong and would have fancied himself a Donkey Kong Jr.
Now, it does raise the question, the big elephant in the room. I'm not talking about Taj, because that's for the Diddy Kong character witness. What happened to this missing generation? Like, Donkey's biological mother or father? Where did they go?
I think they were murdered when they were coming home from a play one night.
A play?
Mm-hmm.
Are you making a Batman reference?
That was Batman reference, yeah.
Well, they sold the Mark of Zorro, unless you're talking about the Christopher Nolan movie, and then it was an opera.
Yep. I really wasn't invested that much in the bit.
I take Batman very seriously, Chad. You know this about me.
Clearly. Yeah.
I bet you can't even name all the Robins.
I bet I can't. I know Dick Grayson. Yeah. I know. No, it's not. No one's named Bruce, because that's Bruce Wayne, who I'm thinking of. There's definitely Dick Grayson.
Chad knows Dick, of course. No, Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, Tim Drake, Stephanie Brown briefly, and Damian Wayne.
Oh, Damon Wayans was a Robin?
No, Bruce Wayne's biological son, Damian Wayne. He had with Talia al Ghul.
Oh, from off of the Bane movie.
Yeah, right. From off of the Bane movie.
Liam Neeson's daughter, right?
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. Oops. Yeah. No. Yeah. They have a 13-year-old son.
Oh, okay. who is Robin? Who Batman cares so little for that he puts him in front of mortal danger on a daily basis.
Well, Damian Wayne was raised by ninjas up until he was 10 years old, so you know.
Again, who Batman cares so little for that he forces him to go to a boarding school run by ninjas.
He didn't know about him until he was 10. He's his bastard child. He's like Toby from off of It's Mr. Pants.
Again, that Batman cares so little for, he doesn't even know that he's been forced to go to a boarding school run by ninjas. Batman's just a terrible father is what I'm getting at.
Well,
much like Donkey Kong's father.
Yeah, okay. Or mother. My personal theory, and obviously there's no in-game context for this. This is just what I surmise could have happened. Is it was a teen pregnancy, and
So what is that in gorilla years? Like she was 3?
Well, we don't know how the Kongs actually age. It's a little cloudy on that because Cranky's been an elderly man for 20 years now.
Yeah.
But I think it was a teen pregnancy, and Cranky's son or daughter didn't know how to deal with it and skipped town and left them holding the baby.
Wow. If only there was a 16 and pregnant at the DK Isles to show her the error of her ways.
You know, if I ever get my filthy hands on official Donkey Kong canon, I'm going to work this in somehow. You know I am. And Nintendo can't stop me. Nintendo can't stop me.
All right. So at some point, Cranky himself, let's get back to Cranky. He must have been mortified about this, but in the goodness of his heart, he wasn't just a mindless kidnapping machine. He took in his somewhat potentially orphaned grandson and treated him as his own. And I guess that was probably just before the events of Donkey Kong Jr.?
Yeah, I would say so. Now, we've also got to talk about Swanky Kong.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Because it was DK Vine's fanon back then. We don't really rigidly adhere to this anymore, but I think it's worth mentioning. Swanky seems to have some sort of relationship with Cranky, and he looks a great deal like Donkey Kong. So could he be Donkey Kong's younger brother or maybe even older brother? Yep. Well,
he could be.
That would throw my teen pregnancy theory kind of for a loop, unless they're
twins.
They basically are twins, as is Funky Kong. I mean, they were all basically the same template, but.
Yeah.
No, I mean, if this is possible, and the only in-game evidence of this besides Swanky's Sideshow and the weird partnership between Cranky and Swanky is the pink gorilla in Donkey Kong Jr. Math.
Right.
Yeah.
So could that be Swanky? Is that what you're getting at?
Could be. I mean,
okay.
So maybe
why is Donkey Kong? Why is Cranky so obsessed with math? For that matter,
we'll get into that. Let's. My last point on Swanky potentially being an offspring or a grandchild of Cranky and Wrinkly is that if my teen pregnancy theory is accurate, and of course there's no way to know because it's something I completely pulled out of my ass, that would mean that potentially they had a teen pregnancy and then like a year or two later had another one, and then they freaked out and left both their children in the care of their parents. Donkey Kong
was
Sr.
just a bridge too far.
Yeah, Donkey Kong Sr. and whatever Wrinkly Kong's Peggy Kong, whatever.
Sure.
So let's talk about Cranky's glory days real quick because we don't normally talk about these games, and I have no desire to. I am Gibbon. The Donkey Kong Arcade Trilogy.
Yeah, if you want to call it that. Yeah. Well, I guess it is technically a trilogy.
It is a trilogy.
Although there's some spin-offs.
There's some spin-offs, and nobody really likes Donkey Kong 3, so that never really talked about. But
no Stanley the Bugman fans.
Wait,
no, Stanley the Bugman was DK Jr., wasn't he?
No,
wait,
he was Donkey Kong 3. What do you?
See, I don't even play these games.
We don't care. This is just the biggest Donkey Kong fan site in the world, and we don't care. Yeah.
Whatever.
Okay, so obviously I don't need to tell the story of the arcade Donkey Kong. It's one of the most well-known Nintendo games and one of the most well-known video games, even to the layman out there. Obviously, big brutish gorilla kidnaps the maiden, and the jump man goes after him and jumps over barrels until he rescues her.
So we're going to regard the EP release of Donkey Kong Comes Home as non-canonical, because in that one Donkey Kong escaped from a zoo, and there was the hit single "No More Zoo for You."
See, this there's like conflicting stories about what the story of Donkey Kong Arcade was. They didn't really settle on anything. And it wasn't until really Rare kind of shored up a lot of the universe for Donkey Kong, created Donkey Kong Island, created the extended Kong clan, and created the context for Big Ape City, even though they got that from Donkey Kong 94. We didn't really have a clear understanding of Donkey Kong's world, so I don't think he was ever in a zoo. I think,
okay.
Yeah, and I don't think he was. I've also heard he was Mario's abused pet, which just paints Mario. For one thing, what is a plumber or carpenter doing with a gorilla for a pet? Like that's the most impractical pet to keep in Brooklyn. And you live in Brooklyn.
Now, I have not seen every episode of the Super Mario Brothers Super Show, but I would be shocked if at some point there was not a person in a gorilla suit.
Oh, I'm sure there was. I'm sure they did have a lot of weird things like coming out of the floorboard. It was an eccentric place.
Yeah.
Their plumbing headquarters. I don't regard that as hard canon, but I'm sure the Super Mario Wiki would disagree.
Yeah, they pick some strange places to dig their heels in, don't they?
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, they're far more rigid than we are when it comes to canon on something.
Bizarrely, yeah.
Yeah. So obviously we have a theory that because the only way to
a game theory,
the only way to reconcile the events of Donkey Kong Arcade with Donkey Kong Country onwards is if, since we know Big Ape City is on an offshore island from Donkey Kong Island, it's technically considered Kong territory. I mean, it's an ape city. That, granted, you can fly there with a blimp, but still, it's within a territory. Mario,
it's a big one.
Yeah, Mario and Pauline had to have been trespassing there. I mean, that wasn't their territory after all; it was the Kong territory. So whatever they were doing there, and we've come up with some real whoppers of theories over the years, including a downed cruise ship. Maybe just they were just sightseeing, like they had stumbled across Donkey Kong Island. Whatever the case may be, they were humans on Kong-controlled territory. And since Donkey Kong Sr. was the steward of Donkey Kong Island at the time, well, he didn't take too kindly to this. And since Mario was, at least in the West, canonically considered Italian-American at the time, from Brooklyn, he was probably an ugly American tourist, destroying landmarks, just generally being boorish. So maybe Donkey Kong Sr. thought, I'm going to teach these two jackasses a lesson. And he in what quickly escalated into a misunderstanding, he kind of abducted Pauline. I mean, it doesn't really look good from any context, but I would say there's more justification for the actions he took than we initially knew in the 80s.
Okay, fair point. Yeah. There also might have been. Do you think it's possible that there was any mind control shenanigans like the later Mario versus Donkey Kong, or was that a byproduct of much further in Mario's development as a person, getting into toy development? Like maybe do you think his plumbing business had hypnotic commercials that drove Donkey Kong crazy?
I don't think Mario ever authorized the mind control. I think that was something the Don Draper of the Mushroom Kingdom came up with, and Mario quickly severed ties with that ad agency once he saw what
I think EGAD is the Don Draper of the Mushroom Universe.
That's a really, really weird version of Mad Men they have then, He's no John Hamm, I'm sorry. Anyway, so we're weirdos. We were so fucking weird. Yeah, anyway, so I don't absolve Cranky Kong of his actions in Donkey Kong Arcade, but I do think we need to understand them in a new light, because Mario and Pauline weren't completely innocent parties there. And if you look at Donkey Kong Jr., that doesn't in any way cast Mario in a good light. Even back in the 80s, he was clearly in the wrong in that situation, where he abducted Donkey Kong himself, and it was left to his son/grandson to rescue him. Donkey Kong Jr. has always been unquestionably a hero in that context, and Mario was the bad guy. He was a guy torturing a gorilla. I don't care what the gorilla did, you don't torture. And this is before gorillas were being shot in zoos, outraging the internet. This is pretty progressive for the early 80s. Would you agree, Chad?
Yes.
Do you want to take another call real quick before we get into Donkey Kong 3?
Yeah, no, I think it is, though. It's pretty significant, the fact that at no point, really, maybe in Donkey Kong 3 with Stanley the Bugman shooting pesticide up his ass, but apart from that, even that version of Donkey Kong Jr. was only ever depicted in a positive light, like in Super Mario Kart, for instance.
Yeah.
He was invited to hang out with the crowd, so it's cool that while Donkey Kong, Cranky Kong's sort of allegiances or depiction was a little bit more complex, the younger generation was always seen favorably.
Which I think is another reason why the brain automatically made the connection that the modern DK was DK Jr. when Donkey Kong Country came out, because he's a hero. And as a kid, I always loved gorillas, and I always rooted for them, and that's why Donkey Kong Jr., I always preferred it over the original Donkey Kong, because I got to play as a gorilla, and he was the hero. Yeah. And it took...
You've always hated talking Godzilla.
I think Godzilla is pretty cool, though, too. Don't get me wrong. I love me some bipedal reptiles.
I know. I think King Kong versus Godzilla was really just the first version of Donkey Kong Country.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I think Kremlings are a natural fit as the antagonist for the series. I've gone into this numerous times. Reptile creatures versus primates. It's in our DNA, man. We want to see it. We want to see this battle play out.
Insectoids would be cool, as I think would perhaps cephalopods or crustaceans, or with Squidicus as their leader. There's still something cool that you could do, even beyond the vertebrate part of the animal kingdom.
Okay, well, before we take our next call, then, because you brought up insectoids, let's quickly get in Donkey Kong 3.
Sure.
Kind of the black sheep of the arcade family in that it was never included in Donkey Kong Classics on the NES. It was just kind of forgotten about. I honestly didn't even know about Donkey Kong 3 until much later on. I didn't know it was a thing that existed until I think I read about it in Nintendo Power, and it just baffled me. So this one does not have Mario in it at all, nor does it have Pauline or Junior. It just has Donkey Kong and Stanley, who is known by his full moniker, Stanley the Bugman, in many corners. And
You can read more about Stanley at GameBest.computer.
actually, that link doesn't work right now. I think Alistair, who gifted it to us, let the domain expire. It's on our features page. Check it out on our features page. 31 years of Stanley the Bugman.
Yeah.
And I will work to get GameBest.computer renewed. So anyway, so canonically, it's hard to work out how Donkey Kong 3 happens, but we do know where it happens, and that is in the juice factory that the Juicy Jungle that the Oinks run. That's on a neighboring island to Donkey Kong Island. And
Yeah, you can actually see in the background in one of those stages the exact setting in which Donkey Kong 3 took place.
So I've always assumed that Stanley was a friend of Mario and Pauline, or maybe if we go with the cruise ship theory on the same down cruise ship, maybe he was the greenhouse proprietor of the cruise ship. I don't know, but anyway, he was this exterminator, and there were bees, and and then there's a gorilla. It's a weird game. I've played it and I don't like it. Like the first Donkey Kong game, I acknowledge, is revolutionary. I actually really enjoyed Donkey Kong Jr. Donkey Kong 3 is just off-putting to me.
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever actually played it. I never had an NES like you did growing up, so a lot of these titles were just like, I got to play Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. because my dentist had the arcade machines.
Oh, cool.
Also got pretty good at Centipede and Mrs. Pac-Man.
I've actually played the arcade Donkey Kong 3. I found an arcade machine for it once, and that's how I played it. I didn't have it on the NES, but I don't care for it. Yeah. But anyway, so whatever the case may be, after the events of Donkey Kong Jr., Donkey Kong then went over to Juicy Jungle to do battle with Stanley the Bugman, and that was his last battle with humanity that we know of.
Right.
But
at some point, though, Donkey Kong Jr. got obsessed with math.
Yeah, so I think what happened was Cranky, trying to be a responsible parent, was I don't know if Donkey Kong was homeschooled. I mean, obviously Wrinkly was a school teacher, so maybe they were homeschooled. But Donkey Kong helped teach him math. If you're going to be the steward of Donkey Kong Island someday, you've got to know basic economics. With the banana coin based economy.
Oh yeah. Trade routes are very important. You need to know your way around modern society if you're going to be traveling to and from the Mushroom Kingdom on a regular basis.
Right. You got to know those exchange rates. So he taught both Donkey Kong Jr. and this anonymous pink gorilla, who may or may not be Swanky Kong, math. And then there was also a canceled spin-off game called Donkey Kong's Fun with Music. And we don't know much about this game, but we know it would have basically been a music-based game way before Donkey Konga. And in the game, Cranky...
Sort of a rhythm-based, right?
I don't know. There was a screenshot in a magazine when it was announced, and then it was just quietly canceled, and we don't really know much about it. But Cranky played the bass in his youth, which was actually a reference that came back much later at the end of Tropical Freeze.
Maybe a happy coincidence, but I wouldn't put it past Retro, because they did make some pretty deep cuts when referencing the arcade titles.
Yeah.
Including referencing Donkey Kong Jr. Math.
Including referencing the movie King of Kong.
That too, yeah. You had the necktie in return.
What is it, Billy Mitchell or?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So Cranky plays the bass. So he is also musically inclined, like all the other Kongs. He plays an instrument. Mm-hmm. All right, let's take
another call.
Yeah, that's it for the arcade years. Let's take a call.
Howdy, boys. This is Elvis from the Tom Hanks Giving Podcast calling to talk about Cranky Kong.
Yeah.
See, my favorite thing about Cranky is how sharp he is in his old age. I'm not sure if it's a difference in the depiction and culture you see in British culture versus American culture, but it feels like most elderly characters that I've seen in media, while they play cantankerous, they're also very stupid. Like a Grandpa Simpson, these older guys are often the butt of the joke. Like oh God, I forgot, what's the TV? Who threw a cane at the TV? You know, that kind of diving in and out of competence. Even our smarter older characters, like Professor Farnsworth or a George Senior Bluth, they're smart, but they play very stupid at the same time. And they're out of touch, which Cranky doesn't seem to be out of touch. He seems to be on the ball. He's a know-it-all elder, and I really like how unique that is. In fact, if I were to look and zone in on the most foolish thing I think we've seen from Cranky, it would have to be his actions in the original Donkey Kong arcade game. Which makes me wonder then, if being defeated and humiliated and captured by Mario and putting his son in danger, if this was an experience that was so formative it turned him into the hard-assed, competent, sharp know-it-all that we know today and who expects so much out of our current DK. Anyway, that's my fan wank, or should I say fan hank. Let me know what you think. And most importantly, what do you think what do you think Grandpa, or Jesus fucking Christ, what do you think Cranky Kong's favorite Tom Hanks movie is?
Oh.
My guess would be Saving Private Ryan, but you guys are the experts. Let me know. Thanks for listening.
Well, we're the experts for Cranky Kong. You're the expert for Tom Hanks. I don't know if we could make this call without a meeting of the minds here.
I feel like Saving Private Ryan might be a good choice, especially for the end of that film. I could see Cranky welling up when the elderly Tom Hanks asks his wife if he was a good man. Like, I could see that really getting to Cranky.
I'm going to say Joe versus the volcano.
Sure, also a good choice.
Because I think Cranky Kong, sometimes he just fantasizes about jumping into the top of Gorilla Glacier, just ending it.
Yeah.
Just ending it all, getting away from everything.
Yeah. He also knew about the ancient battle between the Kongs and the Tiki Tak tribe, so he knew one day he might have to go up against a volcano.
No, thank you for the call. And always great to hear from the fine folks at the Thanksgiving podcast. And I mean that. I love it. I love the Thanksgiving podcast. No, I think he could have learned great lessons from the arcade games and gotten wiser as a matter of that. Yeah. I agree.
You see how I'm having none of this week? I'm just as curmudgeonly as the subject matter.
You are. And he got curmudgeonly in Donkey Kong Country. That was the introduction of Donkey Kong Sr. as Cranky Kong. And
what do you think happened?
Well, he got old, and there was granted, there wasn't much passage of time when you really look at it. Like, it was only 10 years, but when you're a kid seems like an eternity, but looking at it now, 2 years later, it's kind of funny that he was automatically considered a relic and just portrayed as this elderly, coot. But yeah, he, his son/grandson came of age, and he was kind of put out the pasture and was very bitter as a result. And he was an NPC and complained. I mean, it was the genius of Rare conceptualizing the character, and they had these plans for this Grandpappy Kong, this older character, but to actually make him Donkey Kong Sr. and to make him bitter because he was no longer the star of his own series, that was genius. I mean, that's just brilliant. You could break the fourth wall, but you could also just poke fun at so many things. And yeah, he is very, very Western in his depiction. I mean, the whole angry old man kind of thing is very British and American, and it's not something I don't think the Japanese side of Nintendo understood as much, although Miyamoto purportedly loves the character, so I think he gets a kick out of him regardless.
And interestingly, something that we for a long time had attributed to Lee Loveday, which is Cranky's depiction in that first DKC instruction booklet, which beyond the game itself, which was probably a lot of Greg Mayall's style writing, because you would see very very similar levels of wit in the Banjo-Kazooie series, especially Tooie. But that manual was actually written by Dan Osen from Nintendo.
Yeah, Nintendo of America. So, yeah.
Yeah, so they got the character immediately. Like, they knew what Rare was trying to do, and they actually supported it with material that, until recently, we couldn't tell the difference between the best of what Rare would do. So kudos to Ask Dan.
We need to get him on the show at some point. The stories that man could tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, I don't really have much to say about... I mean, everybody knows Cranky Kong in Donkey Kong Country. It's his most famous depiction. He was at his various cabins around the island, and he would give you advice only for World 1 if you're playing the North American version of the game.
Yeah. An early touch of senility that maybe he repaired with a potion down the line.
That's true. Donkey Kong Land, he didn't appear, but he loomed heavily in the game's story. And it was weird. He kind of served as a fourth wall antagonist in some ways, in that he was the whole reason the game happened. Because he was basically still so bitter that Donkey Kong and Diddy proved him wrong in Donkey Kong Country that he was like, oh, well, it's just because it was a 16-bit game. If they were on an 8-bit game like I'm used to, they would fail horribly. And so,
but that's not what put him over the top, though. If you recall, in the instruction booklet, the like 2-tone instruction booklet you would get with the GBA, they actually included a render that I think was made for Land of DK and Diddy plugging their ears while Cranky's just yammering on.
Yeah.
So I think that ultimately their disrespect is what put him over the top.
Yeah, but he basically gets K. Rool to steal the banana horn again.
Yeah, he frees K. Rool and it says, "Do it all again."
Yeah, do it all again, and you're not gonna have your fancy color palette to help you out this time.
Yeah, you have 8 bits.
It's a ludicrous plot, but that's the beauty of Cranky Kong's character is you could do a plot like that fundamentally makes no sense in universe, but is just perfect. Donkey Kong Country 2, he reappeared, as I Am Gibbon referred to. Now he was out of his rocking chair and holding himself up with 2 canes, which never really stuck around as a look, which I actually really like that. But
yeah, his AT-AT impression, as the alt text on Rareware said.
That's right. And this time he was, obviously, his son was kidnapped, or his grandson was kidnapped, in a parallel to his own fate in Donkey Kong Jr., which actually led to a great line in the game where he said, "I would never be kidnapped like that fool donkey." But he was the proprietor of the monkey museums across Crocodile Isle, and that was just a great way for Rare to throw in a bunch of references in the background. But he was the kind of, again, one of the driving forces of the game's secondary plot, which was Diddy proving himself to be a video game hero, and Cranky was the one kind of judging him on this and forcing him to collect the 40 hero coins throughout the game.
Yeah, which again underscored the fact that Cranky Kong has a very storied history in video gaming. So if anyone could bestow him this title, even though Cranky himself was never a video game hero as we know it, he's only ever been portrayed as a villain and a damsel.
Yeah.
Despite that, you know that
he was a hero to the Kongs. He was a hero to the Kongs.
That's true.
That's true. To the Kongs, he was the hero of the Donkey Kong arcade game, not Mario. But
right.
Yeah, and I like how he judged the rankings. Mario was the one to beat with 39 hero coins, and then it was Yoshi, and then it was Link. Right. Kind of showed Link standing in 1995 pre-Ocarina, and like several years after Link to the Past, where Yoshi
was so strange.
Yoshi was considered the bigger icon of Nintendo at that point in time. That brief snapshot of the mid-90s, but
because that was pretty much exactly around the time of Yoshi's Island.
Came out what, 2 or 3 months after Yoshi's Island? Yeah. So yeah. And Donkey Kong Country 3, Cranky had somewhat of a reduced role, surprisingly enough. He didn't have his own spot on the map screen, at least in the original SNES game. He was only in Swanky's Sideshow, out of retirement, as he called it, although not really, considering he was just throwing balls at targets, and he was your chief competitor in Swanky's Sideshow.
Well, as I Am Gibbon noted, more physical exertion than he had done to date.
Right, but it was also him taking a step back, oddly enough. Like, he didn't have a big presence throughout the game. Although
we did, if you did play it with toughest and harder, or just toughest, I think. Yeah, I guess you don't have to stack those. If you just played it with toughest and you did it faster than, I think, Funky Kong, maybe Cranky was the fastest, you would actually get to see him decked out in karate fatigues, which would be expanded upon in the Game Boy Advance version.
Yeah, so in the Game Boy Advance version, he's taken up the Kong karate, as he calls it. He's in the various dojos around the Northern Hemisphere. And I guess this is kind of a parallel to Wrinkly's fitness regiment from the original game, where they're both seniors, but they're active and they're loving life.
Yeah.
So
yeah, if only that hadn't come back to bite Wrinkly in the ass.
Yeah, so sometime between Donkey Kong Land 3 and Donkey Kong 64, Wrinkly Kong died. And strangely enough, we never really get Cranky's reaction to this, despite the fact that her ghost is floating around in Donkey Kong 64. And I would imagine the wounds would be pretty fresh, and you would expect the widow to want to talk to the ghost of his dead wife, but it never really comes up. Like, you think,
I'm sure she can sort of materialize near him whenever she wants. Well, actually, I don't know, because she did seem to be pretty, at least in DK64, she was kind of stuck to those doors, whereas later we saw she could.
Yeah, I think she eventually learned the skill to materialize where she wanted, but yeah, DK64, she was pretty limited. I just wanted one scene of Cranky going up to a Wrinkly door, and maybe reenacting a scene from Ghost, with Patrick Swayze.
That Ghost.
Yeah.
I think perhaps by the time King of Swing, or was it Jungle Climber that she was in? Jungle Climber?
She was in King of Swing. She was in all the Payon games. I mean,
yeah. I guess by the time those came around, she had gotten the spectral version of Robert Picardo's holographic projector.
Star Trek reference. There you go.
Yeah,
Simpsons and Star Trek.
I've started watching Voyager again.
I never thought those words would come out of anybody's mouth, but there you go.
I know. There's actually been a couple decent ones, and then there was one about Balana.
Have you seen the one about the evolution into lizard things?
Oh yeah, I'm well past that.
Okay. So anyway, also in Donkey Kong 64, Cranky takes up mad science, and I know we speculated when the game was and it's still in the pre-release stage, and we found out about Wrinkly's death. Is he trying to revive Wrinkly Kong? But no. My question, Chad, was this done to make the cartoon version of Cranky, who was also dabbling in potions all the time? What was it done to make that less of an outlier, or is that a directive from Nintendo to put stuff from the cartoon in the game?
I really doubt there was much in the way of directive from Nintendo other than, hey, we need you to release this game, so you need to figure out what you want to do with it and ship it.
Yeah.
I think that, although I think that it would probably make sense if you have a DK64 team searching for inspiration in all directions, that you might have elements like Mad Scientist Cranky and Crystal Coconuts appear in the game, albeit in slightly altered form.
I just find it fascinating because it's so rare that something from outside media influences Nintendo. And granted, this was a rare game, but it was still under the supposedly watchful eye of Nintendo. I don't know how watchful it actually was, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's just something that I would love to pick the brains of the DK64 team, if they would even remember at this point.
Well, in lieu of picking, let's take another call.
Yes.
Hi, this is Casper, known as Quaspic104 on the forums.
Hi.
You probably forgot who I am. That's okay.
No, of course not.
There's an air conditioner in the background. I hope you can hear me.
What?
So you're going to be talking about Cranky Kong in your episode.
I know.
So I wanted to talk about the age-old question, perhaps the most important question in Donkey Kong canon and continuity. Is modern Donkey Kong Jr.? Like, if you go on the Donkey Kong wiki, Donkey Kong, his full name is listed as Donkey Kong the Third. How can the Donkey Kong wiki betray us in this way? The modern Donkey Kong is obviously Donkey Kong Jr. Like, it just adds such dramatic weight to this series that you would just be stupid to not believe this. So my question is, what do you say to the haters who believe that modern Donkey Kong is not Donkey Kong Jr.? Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you for your time, Quaspec, a.k.a. Casper. I think hate is going to hate, and we've already weighed in, and I think we both generally support your favorite notion.
Yeah, we're never going to force our opinions down anybody's throat. People can believe what they want to believe, but you know what? There's only a few of us who do this week in and week out, just studying and talking about this shit. So who do you want to believe? I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
We put in the time. We put in the
just
time.
Ask Scully.
So, yeah, real quick, we're kind of wrapping things up here. We got his cameo in Super Smash Bros. Melee. The only time, I should point out, that he's appeared in a game with Mario in the flesh. You can make the case for Donkey Kong Country 2, but I really wouldn't, because that could just be an animatronic. The only time he's appeared in a game with Mario in the flesh since the arcade days.
True.
And
it wasn't necessarily Mario, because I think in the single, because that was only multiplayer that Mario appeared, if you, of course, played as Donkey Kong, as we all did. Because on that stage, Mario didn't come out, did he? Or was that one of those team challenges where randomly it could be Mario?
I would say multiplayer counts as canon in Smash Brothers, considering that's the heart of the Smash Brothers experience, Chad. And you can only unlock things in Smash Brothers by playing some multiplayer matches. So yeah.
Oh, wow. No, I'm not going to disagree with you because I don't really give a shit. But I think isn't that a reversion of DK Vine policy?
Well, back in when we were teenagers, sure. But I've done a lot of maturing since that time I made that anal sex joke, Chad. And
that's true.
So I'm a different man now, and I've thought about it over the last hour, and I've changed my stance.
Wow.
Yeah. But anyway, it's still fascinating. So Cranky Kong appears as a silhouette in the Jungle Jape stage, and he's got potions around him, so it's a reference to Donkey Kong 64. So he's still dabbling in chemistry. He's a regular Walter White. That's a reference, and meth, and but he still, Mario doesn't actually interact with him. And so I always like to imagine that Cranky was just seething in rage, seeing Mario on his property, just rocking back and forth, taking great pride that his son/grandson was beating the ever-loving shit out of his hated nemesis.
Right. So then moving on from the cameo era, we saw, obviously, Cranky Kong crop up in the Payon games that we alluded to earlier.
Yeah, and
he was sort of, I think he was a different, more laid-back, friendlier Cranky, a less cranky.
Yeah, and now that I think about it, one of the reasons why this may have happened was Wrinkly's ghost finally could materialize in front of him, and maybe brought him some peace finally, and some brief happiness. And I would argue this is also the point where he actually relinquished full control of the island to Donkey. And I think you can make the case that happened in King of Swing with that whole jungle jam tournament thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was all about getting... Because K. Rool wanted to, I guess, be in charge of Donkey Kong Island, so he came out in the K. Cruiser 3 and stole the...
Yeah.
banana medals, maybe? Something
Yeah. It's been a while since I played it, actually.
We're the experts, as you said.
Yep. We do this week in and week out. But yeah, I think that I always felt like that was the point where Donkey Kong became the chief guy, and Cranky Kong kind of took a step back, and maybe all that pressure leaving him briefly made him happy. Happier, because he was kind of a kindly old grandpa mentor figure in the Payon games, and I think that was just a Japanese cultural misunderstanding of the character and how they depict the elderly, because they actually respect the elderly in Japan, and this is actually something I have no issues with. We kind of we're a youth obsessed culture here in the West, especially America, and we don't like people over a certain age. Go to bed, Grandpa. And they kind of revere age more in the East.
There's a mysticism around the elderly.
Yeah. So, I mean, but it's not really. It wasn't really true to Cranky, but Payon did so much else right as far as fan shout-outs and just a celebration of obscureness that, we kind of give them a break there. But he was back.
So before we pivot into the retro
before
years,
we pivot like Donald Trump, let's take another call.
Indeed.
Hey, Chad. Hey, Hyle. It's Banjo-Kazooie 2000. I'm currently standing outside of my house because it's the only place that has signal around here, and it's pouring rain. So I wanted to give this quick message about the life and times of Cranky Kong, the original Donkey Kong from Donkey Kong Arcade.
Thanks for clarifying.
He is the best of all of the Kongs. I mean, of course, he could run faster than anyone with K. Rool tied to his back. And, I guess of course, we all know that he's been broke through several years, and the Tropical Freeze, he finally got a chance to show off his true skills, which, for an old guy, he's really athletic. So, you don't really have much else to say or analyze other than, Cranky Kong is a great Kong, and I hope he appears in more DKC or any other Donkey Kong-related material from Nintendo, because he is one of the best characters of the series. So, I want to give my compliments on Cranky and there. So, I don't know. I don't know how many calls there's before he begins to pound, but it's Banjo-Kazooie 2000, up, over, under, and out. Now, I need to make my way back in without getting my phone wet.
Thank you for braving the elements to make the call, BKT2K.
Yeah, thank you. Grab by the Ghoulies, Viva Pinata. Whatever.
Connect Sports
Season 2. Ukulele. What was the other one? Oh, Goldilocks and Little Bear.
That's right.
There you go. So thank you for the call. And yeah, I don't think there's any danger of Cranky Kong going anywhere, considering he is one of the few rare creations that Nintendo themselves seem to love. Which is really, it's really nice to see that the appeal of Cranky kind of translates. Yeah. And hell, they make Cranky Kong toys in the World of Nintendo line from Jack Specific. So that's,
right.
He's safe when he's getting plastic molds based on him. But
right.
What really made him safe and what really made him an established character was Donkey Kong Country Returns and really retro coming in, and they didn't bring too many characters back. It was Donkey, Diddy, Rambi, Squawks, and Cranky, at least initially,
and the banana,
and Cranky was back in the rocking chair in Returns, and he was the proprietor of a shop. But you look at the exterior, and the exterior is identical to Cranky's cabin from Donkey Kong Country. So I would imagine these are just retrofitted Cranky's cabins around the island. And what I found interesting about his appearance in Returns was his relationship with Squawks and what it says about his relationship to the other animal buddies. Because remember, in the instruction booklet to DKC2, he laments that Winky and Espresso have been excised from the game. And we know Winky is in the background of the Monkey Museum, and in the Game Boy Advance version, he's hopping around, and Cranky is running the illegal ostrich races with Espresso.
Yeah, and Minogue and Papa Laz.
Well, you're racing Espresso against those. Those are Kremlin racing ostriches. Of course. They're the enemy. But So Cranky has always loved Winky and Espresso, and I think he loves them because they were cut from DKC2, and he loves them out of spite towards everything else about the Country series. But then in Country, he's very protective of Squawks. I mean, he'll sell you Squawks, so you can use them as a puzzle piece sniffing tool. But he's very adamant that you take care of him, and he even says, scratch behind his ears, whatever that means for a parrot. And
Yeah.
I think
Between his head holes.
And you look back at, he had Ramby crates outside of Cranky's cabin in DKC. And it really does paint the picture that Cranky has a very big soft spot for the animal buddies in general. He does seem to, he's got cracks in that armor, that curmudgeonly, crusty exterior. And that makes sense because he also comments in Donkey Kong Country Returns how much he loves the island, how much he loves Donkey Kong Island. And so I think he really is at peace on the island and among the wildlife of the island. Like, that's one of the few soft spots he has that he won't be too bitchy about.
And then finally, in Tropical Freeze, for the first time, Cranky would actually get to ride one of the animal buddies.
That's right. And he's actually out of retirement for real, not in a half-assed kind of soft way portrayed in DKC3. He is actually one of the 4 playable Kongs in the game. He
trended on Twitter.
Granted, a lot of that was outrage and confusion over why the hell this was Nintendo's big announcement. What was it? Was it the Spike TV Game Awards or something?
It was.
Yeah. So whatever, but Cranky Kong got a lot of press that day, and I'm sure he was happy. He also briefly took over Nintendo's Twitter during the promotion for Tropical Freeze, and actually got snarky about, what was it, the GameSpot review for Tropical Freeze, where they
I don't remember that at all.
Yeah. He basically said he was old enough to remember where like something about, because GameSpot essentially was terrible at the game, they gave it a bad review, and he was snarky about that, just saying, he was old enough to remember when being rubbish at games wasn't indicative that the game was bad or something. I don't know. Anyway, but it was nice to see Nintendo getting into the spirit. It wasn't Dan Osen caliber Cranky Kong, but it was still nice to see that, he could be a snarky old man in the promotional materials. And
it's nice to see Nintendo have an edge of any kind.
Yeah, even if it's a very slight edge. Yeah, because Nintendo's really gotten soft, much like Cranky did in the Payon era. But is here's my question as we start to wrap this up here: is Cranky a massive hypocrite? Because throughout the SNES era into Donkey Kong 64, he complained about the games, and he would say, the only true games are on a single screen with this limited color palette. We only needed 2 buttons, whatever. And then he's in a platformer that scrolls, and he's one of the stars of the game, and he seems happy as a giant clam. Is Cranky Kong a hypocrite? And I would say, yes, he is, but you have to understand where he's coming from. Cranky's...
I would say, I would agree. Agree.
Cranky's whole bitterness stems from being put out to pasture when he felt like he had more to offer. And so the whole reason he railed against DKC, against the whole trilogy, against all of Rare's output, was because he didn't get to show what he was made of. And Tropical Freeze, and you could make the argue that it's, testosterone-fueled potions, chemically enhanced Cranky, whatever. But the fact is, he could still get the job done. And a lot of gamers feel like the most fun character to play as in the game, or the most challengingly fun character to play as, is Cranky Kong. He is the character for skilled gamers in Tropical Freeze. So
he certainly is. If you and for speedrunners, for that matter,
which is very, I think, apropos to the character. So he's a hypocrite, but he's finally found some peace in Tropical Freeze. I like that the character finally got, I don't know, he almost came full circle in a way. If Tropical Freeze was the last time we saw him, if he died of a massive coronary sometime after Tropical Freeze, I would say that was the perfect way to go out, because he got to prove us all wrong. He's still quite capable. And honestly, if they did retire the character Cranky Kong, I would be at peace where they left him off, with one minor exception.
Oh yeah.
We need to see him face off one more time against Mario, and this is one of the this is one of the stickling points of the series, because it's kind of this great untold story of the Donkey Kong series. Donkey Kong, the modern Donkey Kong Jr., as we pointedly refer to him as, has kind of become friends with Mario over the years. It was they had a little bit of a rivalry, you know, in the kart games, and then around Mario Party that started to thaw, and they became allies more and more. And occasionally the rivalry breaks out again in the Mario versus Donkey Kong series, but you can chalk that up to brainwashing, or them staging plays, or it all being done for charity. However you want to. No, actually,
Yes.
That is the plot of some of the later ones. Like, oh, it was just an act. We're really buddies.
No, I was laughing at the suggestion that it's all for charity.
I think you can make the case for some. I am Gibbon as the expert here, so I will defer to him on the forum.
Sure.
He can call us out where appropriate. But so I would imagine Cranky is still quite bitter about Mario and still views him as his great enemy in life. What K. Rool is to the modern Donkey Kong, Mario is to Cranky Kong, and it's I'm sure it's all in Cranky's head too. This great like rivalry, and his what a bastard Mario is. So I think it's a great shame that we haven't actually seen them interact in a game. We've seen them in one game together, but they didn't interact at all. And I think before all is said and done, before the heat death of the universe, we need to see Cranky Kong face off against Mario, and their past needs to be acknowledged. And
Yeah. I think that would. Go ahead.
No, I would die a happy man, if nothing else. If we die in horrible, atomic war, I would still die happy knowing I saw Cranky and Mario face off one last time.
Yeah, I think that would be a kind of a fantastic full circle swan song, like a series finale for all of Nintendo's output. So look forward to that in 2019.
This has been a File 2 production.
Qué rico.